The Festival of Dionysus. State Standard HS2.T.CR1.A. Investigate historical and/or cultural conventions and their impact on the visual composition of a theatrical work. We have learned so far that humans have a natural impulse to imitate the world around them, and that impulse showed itself through religious ritual and storytelling. And out of those two things came theater. For a long time, theater was not considered an art form. Theater was an act of religious worship. But even though we now consider theater an art form, not a religious act, there are some traditions from way back then that we still hold on to, and some that we know about that we've let go of. Some traditions are so common, we don't even think about them. We just do them the same way every time. For example, what are the events that take place when you go to the movies? Think about the order of events. You arrive at the theater, you purchase your ticket, you might stop at the concession stand to get popcorn that's way too expensive. You give your ticket to an usher who tears it in half. You then find the correct theater and choose a seat. If you're there early, there are previews that you will watch before the movie starts. When it is time for the movie to begin, the lights in the theater will dim. When the movie is over, there are credits that roll up the screen. This is a fairly standard structure that gives you a good idea of what to expect each time you go to the movies. The word for this is convention. A convention is a standard way of doing things. It is a structure developed over time through repeated occurrence. A convention of going to the movies now is that the trailers play before the film. That custom has changed. 50 years ago, the trailers came after the film. This lets us know that a convention is a standard way of doing things, but it is not set in stone. Conventions can be challenged and change over time. The ancient Greeks were the first people to develop conventions for the theater. These conventions were part of a religious festival in honor of the god Dionysus, also known as Bacchus. Dionysus was the god of wine and fertility, and he famously loved to party. Dionysus had a companion whose name was Pan. Pan was a mythical creature known as a satyr. A satyr was half man, half goat. Pan's job was to lure people into the forest to be seduced by Dionysus. Because of the partying that came to be associated with the worship of Dionysus, if you ever hear someone use the term Dionysian, or Bacchae to refer to an event, what they meant was that it was raunchy. Each spring, the festival of Dionysus drew visitors from all over Greece. They came to worship and honor the god, hoping that if they could please him, he would bless them with a good crop and lots of babies. So, even though this was a religious festival, remember, this is the god of revelry, meaning in order to worship this god, the people had to party hard. The Grand Procession was the central event of the festival of Dionysus. The closest thing we have to it in the modern world is a Mardi Gras parade. So when you hear Grand Procession, think Mardi Gras. During this event, the statue of Dionysus would be carried out of his temple onto the festival grounds so that the god could participate vicariously in the party. He was carried by Ephebi. Ephebi were soldiers who escorted the statue. Walking in front of the statue were Canophori. Canophori were the beautiful young women who would carry the animals that were going to be sacrificed to the god. Usually, this would be a goat. The worshippers would enter the festival grounds in a spiral shape, which is sacred to the god Dionysus. The seating area around the spiral festival grounds is known as the theatron. This was where people who were watching but not participating would sit in order to observe the festival activities. The statue of Dionysus would be placed front and center so he could watch the sacrifices. The altar for the burning of the sacrifices had a special name, and that name was the thymele. The thymele was the altar where sacrifices like goats, other animals, or first fruits of the harvest would be burned in order to honor the god. While the sacrifices were burning, the worshippers would also dance and sing special songs called dithyrambs. Dithyrambs are the ancient equivalent of our modern hymns. They were songs specifically sung to honor a god. This group of singing, dancing worshippers were called the chorus. These acts of religious worship are considered the earliest form of theater. Over time, the songs became ballads that told a story, and the dances were less wild and more rehearsed to tell specific stories about the great acts of the god Dionysus. Then, no one is sure when, but someone had a drunken idea that changed everything. What if one person stepped away from the singing and dancing and told a story to go along with the songs? According to legend, the first person to step away from the chorus and speak was named Thespis. Thespis is credited with being the first actor. It is from him that we get the term thespian. Thespian, spelled with a TH, literally translated means little Thespis. Traditionally, this word refers to a performer, but in modern usage, a thespian is any theater artist. The conventions of a Greek play had changed to now include the Grand Procession, a chorus of singing, dancing worshippers, and an actor to tell a story. As the actor and the storytelling became more important over time, the role of the Greek chorus changed. The functions of the Greek chorus were primarily singing and dancing. They also dressed as the main character. The chorus acted as mediators, almost like a narrator for the story. These mediators would tell background information as the audience needed to know it in order to understand what was happening. The chorus also acted as behavior models. Much like a laugh track in a sitcom tells the audience when to laugh, the chorus would react appropriately to the events of a play, laughing when something was supposed to be funny, crying when something was supposed to be sad.